Hello, and welcome to the Uncommon Commander, a channel where we bring janky deck techs to you that involve interesting cards, mechanics, and rarely used commanders. Today I'm going to be presenting a Commander EDH deck tech built on a $150 budget at the time of its creation, and centered around the baddest cat in the multiverse, Mirri. She may be a female cat, but, and for this I am once again stealing from the MTG Wiki, as is my wont, did you know she was banished from her forest home because she had two different colored eyes? You know who else had two different colored eyes, was a cool cat, was basically homeless, and liked to fight? You guessed it, Cowboy Bebop's Spike Spiegel. They're practically identical. Interestingly, they both also end up on flying ships and battle villains. The Bebop and the Weatherlight even look the same. Wow! They have a pretty similar ending to their stories, but I won't spoil anything for those who want to watch Cowboy Bebop but haven't yet. In fact, if you haven't watched Cowboy Bebop yet, you should stop watching this and start watching Cowboy Bebop instead. It's great! Now if you're still here, let's talk about that deck. Mirri is a pretty little cat lady who will tear your eyes out if you call her cute or good girl. She costs a generic, a white, and a green mana to cast, and is a legendary cat warrior with a 3/2 body. She also has a few abilities. First of all, she has the keyword ability First Strike, and then she has an ability that says, whenever Mirri Weatherlight Duelist attacks, each opponent can't block with more than one creature this combat. It also has, as long as Mirri Weatherlight Duelist is tapped, no more than one creature can attack you each combat. That makes her a one-sided dueling grounds in the command zone. We're going to really lean into those long-winded abilities of hers for this build, and try to build a duelist-style attack, parry, and riposte deck. Or maybe far less elegantly, and far more likely, attack, absorb a huge blow, and counterattack and try to hit your opponent even harder than they just hit you. I considered what this might look like, turned into magic cards, and for 10 minutes I seriously considered going with the Turbo Fog theme, but ultimately decided to represent the duels through the act of single combat. To this effect, I went with the Voltron archetype. One of the weaknesses of running a Voltron deck is that you either need a pillow fort or chump blockers in order to not get destroyed when the commander is tapped. In this case, Mirri provides all the fort we need, all on her own. The downside to using her is that she has no protection ability for herself, and no built-in evasion, so we'll be sure to run plenty of those in the 99. If you want a Selesnya Voltron commander that does have all that, just do the easy thing and play Sigarda. The path to victory with Mirri is to focus one enemy down at a time. I've also decided to utilize the fight and lure mechanics as a prominent form of removal, picking duels between Mirri and my opponent's creatures. By the way, as you watch this video, if you like what you're seeing and want to support this channel, please note the like and subscribe buttons on your screen. That helps this channel grow, and also helps me know what content you like best so I can keep making it. Now without wasting any more of your time, on to the video. Ramp, ramp, ramp. All we do is ramp. Today that's even more true. The average CMC of this deck is reasonably low at 3 mana, but that doesn't factor in all the equip and activated ability costs we're going to see on our spells to make Mirri a killing machine. The reality is that the true converted mana cost is probably around 3.7 or 3.8 mana, which is a little on the steep end. To assist with this, we'll start with some 1 mana ramp spells. Diligent Farmhand is a creature that costs a green mana to cast and can be sacrificed if you pay a green and a generic mana in order to search your library for a basic land card and put that into play tapped. Font of Fertility is the exact same, except that it's an enchantment version. Wayfarer's Bauble is also the same, except that it's an artifact, and the mana requirements are all generic instead of green. We also have Llanowar Elves, Wild Growth, and Sol Ring. The first two cost a single green mana. Llanowar Elves is a creature that then taps for a green mana, while Wild Growth is an enchantment aura that causes the land it's enchanting to tap for an additional green mana. Sol Ring is the most popular mana rock in the world, but if you've been living under a mana rock, I'll let you know that it costs a single generic mana to cast and taps for 2 colorless. A single mana spell that isn't quite ramp but does tutor up a land for us is Expedition Map. This is in here in order to find whatever utility land will be the most important to us, since it can find any land, not just basics. At 2 mana we have Mindstone, Sakura Tribe Elder, and Selesnya Signet. Mindstone can be sacrificed to draw a card when we no longer need it. Sakura Tribe Elder can act as a blocker before being sacrificed in order to find a land, and Selesnya Signet is just a basic mana rock that does nothing else really. Also at 2 mana is Thematic Compass, which isn't really a ramp spell, but it does help us hit our land drops. Once we reach our end step with 7 or more lands in play, it transforms into Spires of Orazca, and in doing so, does ramp us. It's a functional reprint of Maze of Ith, dissuading our opponents from sending a creature at us. At 3 mana, we have Commander's Sphere, which in this deck will tap for either a green or a white mana, and can be sacrificed to draw a card when we no longer need it. Selesnya Locket does the exact same thing, except it requires a whopping 4 green-white hybrid mana for its sacrifice ability, but then draws you 2 cards instead of just 1. Worn Power Stone is our final mana rock. It costs 3 colorless and enters the battlefield tapped, but from then on generates 2 colorless mana each time we activate it. Finally, we have Danitha Capashen, Paragon. She has keyword abilities of First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink on a 2/2 body. She's also loosely a ramp spell, as she reduces the casting cost of our auras and equipment spells, which make up a large portion of this deck. In a pinch, we can toss equipment onto her, and she'll do fairly well as a secondary Voltron creature. We have some cards in here specifically to protect Mirri, or whatever other creature we're turning into our Voltron. None of the creatures in here have natural protection for themselves, so these are pretty important to get down if you want to keep your Voltron on the board. First up, we have our Hexproof gifting cards, Mirror Shield, and Archetype of Endurance. Mirror Shield is an equipment that costs 2 generic mana to cast and 2 more to equip, and when you do, gives your creature +0/+2, Hexproof, and an ability that says, whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. It's Death Touch to Death Touch creatures, and protects your own from Death Touch. That's niche, but it can be useful. Archetype of Endurance is both an enchantment and a creature with a body that's 6/5, and gives all your creatures hexproof while stripping it away from all of your opponent's creatures. This is the rare creature capable of being your Voltron that actually does protect itself. We also have several auras in Savage Silhouette, Gaia's Embrace, and Shield of the Oversoul. Savage Silhouette protects and buffs your creature by giving it an activated ability to regenerate and get +2/+2 for a generic and a green mana. Gaia's Embrace doubles, or rather triples, as protection, evasion, and a buff by giving your creature a regenerate activated ability that costs a single green, and passively giving it trample and +3/+3. Finally, Shield of the Oversoul is the best of the 3 as long as it's on Mirri, giving the enchanted creature +1/+1 in flying if it's white, and also giving it +1/+1 and indestructible if it's green. So Mirri actually gets +2/+2 indestructible and flying. Since we've showed off a couple of cards already that give evasion, let's look at some more cards that were specifically added to make Catwoman evasive. Most of our evasion comes in the form of trample. The most basic of these is Rancor, which costs a single green mana and then enchants your creature, giving it +2/+0 and trample. As a bonus, if the creature gets removed, Rancor comes back to your hand instead of going to the graveyard. 2 other auras with similar traits are Armadillo Cloak and Mythic Proportions. Armadillo Cloak appears to give +3/+3 trample and lifelink, but that's deceptive. It doesn't actually give lifelink, it gives an old form of pseudo-lifelink that is not lifelink, and therefore stacks with lifelink. When gaining 30 life on every attack, who cares if our opponents are sending big creatures at us each combat? Unless it's Infect, but I mean, what kind of person runs Infect? Well, I guess sometimes I do, but don't worry about that. Our final aura in this category is Mythic Proportions, which costs a whopping 3 green and 4 generic mana, but then gives Mirri +8/+8 and trample. That puts her at 11 power, which puts you just 2 unblocked swings from killing somebody with commander damage. It costs a lot, but that's a heck of a bomb. We also have Shadow Spear, which gives our creature its equip to +1/+1, trample, and lifelink, and has an activated ability that costs 1 mana. It strips away hexproof and indestructibility from our opponent's creatures. I love to see the Evasion play a Wrath while I've got this waiting for them. Silly Evasion, if Soren Markov can unmake you, I can unmake you. Lastly, we have an aura that's not just a simple buff and trample. Eldrazi Conscription costs 8 colorless mana and gives +10/+10 trample, but then also gives Annihilator too. The same kind of people that are willing to run Infect are the kind of people that are willing to run Annihilator. We're in green, which means we're in the card draw color. Okay, fine, you're a smart person. You know that blue is the card draw color. Let me clarify. We're in green, which is the card draw color with some usually meaningless qualifiers attached. The first of these qualifiers for us is being able to do damage to our opponents. For this one, we've got Mask of Memory and Snake Umbra. Mask of Memory allows us to draw 2 cards when we deal combat damage to a player with the equipped creature, and then discard 1 card from our hand. Snake Umbra is an aura that allows us to draw 1 card when we damage our opponent with the creature that it's enchanting, and it gives totem armor for some added protection. Our next qualifier is our commander dying or being exiled and then placed in the command zone. Myth Unbound draws a card whenever that happens. It will also allow us to pay 1 fewer mana of commander tax for each time the commander has been cast from the command zone. Obviously, we don't want our commander dying at all, but if she does, when she does, this immediately becomes a pretty great card. Another condition is that we can draw cards if we have a big creature. Garruk Primal Hunter is a planeswalker for 5 mana that is in here primarily to draw cards. If the cards aren't needed, he can make some tokens for you to jump block with. Of note, Mirri does not stop enemies from attacking Garruk with more than 1 creature each turn. Mirri makes her bones protecting you, not Garruk. A green card that has no restrictions for drawing at all because it's actually a blue card is Harmonize. This is super helpful if we've lost our board state after emptying our hand. Save it for when you need it. Similarly, Genesis Wave is great for giving us a board again after it's been lost. Make sure you have a creature on the battlefield first so that any auras that you draw will have something to target. I don't usually cast this for anything less than X equals 3. Additionally, this can be used as a really expensive ramp spell. Each land found with it will enter the battlefield untapped. Mind's Eye is in here specifically because we have very few card draw effects that are consistent throughout the game. With Mind's Eye, as long as your opponents are drawing cards, and you've got some mana open, you also get to draw cards. A pair of cards that turn all of our equipment into cantrips are Pure Steel Paladin and SRAM, Senior Edificer. Pure Steel Paladin also allows us to equip for free as long as we have 3 artifacts or more in play, while SRAM also draws a card whenever we cast an aura. We don't have any vehicles in this deck, so that part of his ability is useless. The final card draw spell is a white draw spell and a buff. Sage's Reverie draws a card for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. Sage's Reverie does count itself for this effect. It also buffs the creature you target with by +1/+1 for each aura that's attached to it. When this video started, I promised you that Mirri would duel our opponent's creatures, and so far, I have just really not lived up to that promise, have I? Well, this is where that changes. Provoke, Indrik Umbra, and Tower Above all force at least one of our opponent's creatures to block if able. Provoke is admittedly not the best card for this strategy, but does cantrip, and also portrays Mirri jumping into Krovex's fight against Selenia. That's a flavor win, so I'm all in on it. The only bad part about this is if you used it against a Selenia player, they'd probably just pay 2 life and return her to their hand. What a letdown. Anyway, Indrik Umbra has totem armor to protect our creature it's enchanting, and Tower Above gives Wither, so it's effective against indestructible creatures. If we can't force a block against a creature, especially against creatures with tap abilities for instance, we can still use the fight mechanic on them. For this we have Dromoka's Command, Cartouche of Strength, and Ulvenwald Tracker. Dromoka's Command also has some other useful modes, while Cartouche gives a small buff and the Trample ability for added evasion. Ulvenwald Tracker really just forces fights, but it is a repeatable version and a great 1-drop. Because we're in good colors for it, we've also got ways to remove threats that are independent of our creatures. Beast Within is the most versatile one, as it removes any permanent, with the drawback that it's a destroy effect and not an exile effect, and it gives your opponents a 3/3 beast. But, you can just fight that thing. Return to Nature also is a destruction effect, but only for artifacts and enchantments. It can also exile a single card from a graveyard. True Love's Kiss is our final targeted removal spell, exiling a targeted artifact or enchantment, and then drawing a card in order to replace itself. If you've got a lot of indestructibility in your playgroup, maybe replace one of these destroy spells with an exile one like Crush Contraband or Return to Dust. We also have some board wipes. A couple of very one-sided ones are Divine Reckoning and Single Combat. Divine Reckoning allows each person to choose one creature, and the rest get destroyed. It also has flashback, so it can be used once again from your graveyard if people decide it's a good idea to keep playing pesky blockers. Single Combat is largely the same, except it allows each player to select a creature, or if they prefer, a planeswalker. Then they sacrifice the rest, rather than destroy, so this does get around to indestructibility. Finally, we have Tragic Arrogance, which is again very similar to the last couple, except this time you're selecting one of each type of non-land permanent for each player, and then each player sacrifices the rest. This will typically leave you with the best board state since you can pick their worst things and your best. An equipment that acts a bit like a red damage-based board wipe is Kusarigama. This gives the creature it's equipped to a fire-breathing ability for 2 generic mana, and also has, whenever equipped creature deals damage to a blocking creature, Kusarigama deals that much damage to each other creature defending player controls. Force a block with Provoke, and board wipe a single opponent's creatures. Some cards don't really fit into the main categories I usually build from, and these cards are ones I like to call utility. They could be called enablers or some other such thing as well. To start with, we have haste-giving cards like Swiftfoot Boots, Obsidian Battle Axe, and Assault Suit. In addition to haste, Swiftfoot Boots also give hexproof, while Obsidian Battle Axe can auto-equip to Mirri whenever she enters the battlefield while it's already out, and Assault Suit gives some added protection in that players can't make you sacrifice the creature it's equipped to. This can be a drawback as well. For instance, if someone is making you choose a creature to sacrifice, as with Barter in Blood, you can't choose the creature with Assault Suit equipped to it. That's an impossible choice, so the game rules won't let you do it. If the only creature you have on the battlefield is the one with Assault Suit, you simply don't choose any creature to sacrifice and get off scot-free. Assault Suit also lets you pass off the equipped creature to an opponent for their turn. In some cases, you may actually choose to pass the creature to someone else for their turn. If Mirri is your equipped creature, though, I would only pass her to an opponent if I was sure they wouldn't attack me with any other creatures, as this deck doesn't have much in the way of chump blockers, so we really do need Mirri's ability to protect ourselves. Another utility card we have is Basilisk Caller. This doesn't buff or give any real evasion, but it does give something like evasion in Death Touch, and also gives lifelink. For those who don't know, Trample works by sending non-lethal damage past the creature that you've trampled over into your opponent. Death Touch works by making a single damage count as lethal. This means that a creature with both keywords, Trample and Death Touch, only does 1 damage to the creature blocking it and all of the rest to the opponent hiding behind that creature. If you've got an 8-power Mirri swinging for Trample and Death Touch, and she's against a 5/5 blocker, she'll deal 1 damage to the blocker, kill it, and deal 7 damage to your opponent. Nice. We also have a couple of tutors in this deck, an Idyllic Tutor and Open the Armory. Idyllic Tutor will find any of our enchantments, and Open the Armory will find any aura or equipment. These are great for finding any key pieces we're missing. I usually use them on cards to protect my Voltron commander or ones that give it trample. Road of Return and Tristani Discordant round out our utility slots. Road of Return is very useful for defeating commander attacks, and can also be used to bring any permanent we want from our graveyard to our hand. Tristani Discordant gives a nice little anthem, can be an alright Voltron target itself, if we're desperate, and gives us a couple of chump blockers, and most importantly, thwarts those who wish to steal our giant Voltron creature and beat our faces in with it. Shove off, Captivating Vampire. If there are loads of theft effects in your playgroup, I'd recommend running Brooding Saurian instead of Tristani Discordant, as that has less utility, but activates at each end step instead of just on your end step. Or figure out something else to cut and run both. Alright everybody, you've made it. It's time to talk about land. We're running a little color fixing and a lot of utility. Which would you like to start with? Utility lands it is. First, we have Buried Ruin, which can be sacrificed to bring any very important artifact that got destroyed back to your hand so that you can replay it. Homeward Path does a great job of anti-theft in the same vein as Tristani Discordant. Moving on, we have Forge of Heroes and Opal Palace. Both give a small buff to Mirri when you cast her. Opal Palace goes a step further and helps with color fixing. Ghost Quarter and Scavenger Grounds both act as removal if you're willing to sacrifice them. Ghost Quarter removes a troublesome land, and Scavenger Grounds exiles all cards from all graveyards when it's sacrificed. Rogue's Passage is the final colorless utility land. If you pay 4 mana and tap Rogue's Passage, you can make a target creature you control unblockable until the end of the turn. Sometimes you just can't trample through a creature in order to get to your opponent. If that happens, unblockable is a great way to go. For color fixing, we've got the Gain lands, Blossoming Sands, and Grey Pelt Refuge. This is where you can really see that $150 budget coming into play. We also have Temple of Plenty, which is still very cheap, but at least does something useful, allowing us to scry one when it enters. Further, we have Mirri Landscape and Corrosive Verge. These are both colorless tap lands on their own, but also ramp us further when cracked. Rounding out the land base, we have 12 forests and 10 plains. So that's all 95 cards for the deck. Ha, that's right, I tricked you. I left 5 cards out. I did it exclusively so that I could pigeonhole in a segment that uses Baron von Count's art that I like to call The Final Countdown! A segment in which I hand-selected 5 cards from the deck that I've sorted into a particular order, that order being 5 through 1. I know, I said that Rogue's Passage was rounding out our colorless utility lands, but if lying to you about our deck being complete at 95 cards in every video I've ever created has taught you anything, it's taught you that I'm totally willing to lie for dramatic effect. That's happened again to you just before this final countdown, and it's about to happen again now at number 5, because we totally do have another colorless utility land, and its name is Hall of Heliod's Generosity. This bad boy returns your enchantments from your graveyard to the top of your library. It would be better, of course, if it was to your hand, granted, but as a trade-off, you don't have to sacrifice Hall of Heliod's Generosity when you use it, making it a repeatable effect. Did your opponents think they got rid of your Eldrazi conscription? The fools! First Strike is a great keyword. It makes it so that we do our combat damage before our opponents do. But you know what's even better? Double Strike. The next card does not grant Double Strike. We already went over the Double Strike cards. Did you forget? Oh no. This card, coming in at number 4, is not a Double Strike, but it is functionally a Double Strike. Unless, of course, your creature already has Double Strike. If that's the case, we might as well call this card Quadruple Strike. It's Inquisitor's Flail. The flail doubles the damage both by and to the creature to which it's equipped. This means that it's great with First Strike, as First Strike can usually nullify the downside of it, but it actually stacks with Double Strike, making it insanely effective with that keyword. Just be careful when using the fight mechanic with this card, as fight does not factor in First Strike or Double Strike. You can probably tell that I'm a pretty conservative guy with how my decks are built. Super defensive, never too high, never too low. Balanced strikes, right? Yeah, that's totally who I am. Which is why I have a defensive card at number 3 on this list. It protects not just our commander, but all of our creatures. It gives both hexproof and regenerate, so you can survive targeted removal and board wipes alike. A single card does all that. No wonder it costs nearly $10. It's asceticism. The hexproof part of it is a passive anthem for all of our creatures, but the regenerate portion does cost a colorless and a green mana per creature. But if you've got the mana to spare and nobody casts a Wrath of God, you'll have some seriously sticky creatures. For the politically minded individuals out there, you can grant regenerate to another player's creatures as well. There may be some good deals out there just waiting to be cut. Some bombs are built to win more, and some are built to aid recovery from a lost board. At number 2, we've got a card that was built to do both. Entering the battlefield, we have Heavenly Blademaster. She costs 6 mana and is a 3/6 angel. She has Double Strike and Flying as keywords. She also has an ETB that reads, when Heavenly Blademaster enters the battlefield, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to it. Finally, she has an Anthem effect, giving each other creature you control +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to her. I personally prefer to save this for when Mirri gets removed, giving me a very quick bounce back by having everything just auto-equipped to the Blademaster. If you're feeling daring, however, feel free to cast her while you've already got a Voltron on the board, and she'll also get those auras and just give you a giant creature's board state. Now finally, at number 1, we have a utility card. It's just a 1-drop. It's a kind of do-nothing enchantment actually, it's not even really that good. I mean, it contains the best part of Hammer of Nazan and lets you play Voltron at instant speed, but is that really that good? Well, I'll let you decide. It's Sigarda's Aid. Now you can pretend that you're playing a blue deck, casting auras and equipment at instant speed and cheating equip costs while doing it. There are few things more satisfying than casting a Black Blade Reforged after your opponents have declared no blockers, having it auto-equip to Mirri, and just murdering them with her. That's an interaction most decks don't see coming, and it won you the game. Well done, champion. You just won with the number 1 card in this deck. Well, that was a rousing countdown in some particular order. But you know what that means. We've come to the end of our show today. I want to thank you for watching this episode of The Uncommon Commander. If you enjoyed this deck tech, you can find a link to it in the video description. Each deck I make a video for can be found at my tapped out page. Again, if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you did, please click on the thumb up icon on your screen and subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss our future content. Also, feel free to leave a comment below or email me at uncommoncommander@gmail.com, spelled exactly how it sounds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, friends.